What's happening, beautiful people? My name is Crystal Holland, and I want to thank you for tuning into Inhabit My Eyes, learning how to heal through the stories of afflicted healers. This podcast will be a safe place to talk about deep and hard human questions centered around chronic illnesses, physical, mental, and spiritual health and wellness, spiritual abuse, and trauma. On this platform, we will discuss tools to healing holistically. Complex topics need complex solutions because humans are beautiful, complex creations shaped by complex lived experiences. This podcast is strictly for educational purposes. We are not licensed healthcare professionals. Please contact your primary care physician, therapist, or licensed counselor to get the professional help you need. This podcast will discuss topics that may cause a trauma response in you. Therefore, I suggest you seek professional support and pause on listening to any topics you're not prepared to navigate through until you have the necessary support to be successful on your healing journey. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to Inhabit My Eyes. Let's acknowledge, learn, grieve, heal, grow, build, and serve one day at a time. Hey, what's going on, Love Your Life family and friends? Welcome back to another episode of Inhabit My Eyes. This is a platform to learn the healing journey of afflicted healers. And so we are so incredibly excited for this podcast. This is a safe place to talk about deep, hard human questions centered around chronic illness, physical, mental, spiritual health and wellness, spiritual abuse, and trauma. Now, this podcast is strictly for educational purposes. We are not licensed healthcare professionals. Please contact your primary care physician, therapist, or licensed counselor to get the professional help that you may need. There will be conversations on here that may cause a trigger response. And so until you have the necessary support to have with you to navigate through this, I encourage you to pause on listening. I am incredibly excited to welcome our guest, Nedra Woolfolk, today. Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal.
Oh, for sure. Just super excited. Inhabit My Eyes, as I mentioned before, is really a platform to just have a safe place to really deal with the world of chronic illness. It's a very vulnerable place. It's a misunderstood place. And I think it is vital that those in the chronic illness world, their voices are heard. I've had an intense journey and I've heard parts of Nedra's story and have been just taken back by her process. And she's a miracle. She's a living miracle. And so we're truly excited to have her with us today. How you doing, Nedra?
Doing good. I am happy to be here, excited to share my story. And just thank you for having me.
You bet. So we're just gonna have us a real conversation. It's not gonna be all rigid, and really just want to open up and tell us, who is Nedra?
Well, I'm Nedra. 40-year-old single mom of a 15-year-old boy. His name is Caleb. Caleb is one of my reasons why. And I'm also a sister, a daughter, a friend, confidant. But most importantly, I think I am and just learning me as well. So those are part of me, but I'm still learning who I am. I'm getting into learning who Nedra really is and what her purpose is. So that's a good thing too.
Good deal. What do you like to do for fun and to relax?
Well, you know what? I'm going to be very honest. I'm learning that again. Okay. Before Crohn's, I love to read. I love to cook. I love to hang out with friends, family, sing, although I can't sing. But, when you're in the room or in the bathroom, you think you can. Those are the things that I really do and did really, really enjoy just being around people. So right now I'm in the process of getting back out there, learning those things that I like. It's been a challenge, but also just eye opening because so many things about me are different now. But it's a good thing. But yeah, I'm learning some of the things that I like.
That's good. That fresh start. I think that's beautiful, and it really speaks to you taking care of yourself, which is huge.
It is huge. It's a really big step because looking in the mirror and looking at yourself is never easy, but needed. Because you have to be honest. Yeah. And sometimes you are afraid of what the truth is when you look in the mirror. You already know. Your gut tells you, right? But when you really become reflective and start to look at yourself and you go, okay. And it's also lines up with your spiritual. It talks to you. For me, things line up for a reason. You ignore it if you want to. But the beauty of it is when you start to walk into it. That's when you start to find your freedom.
Yeah.
And you start to walk into what you run from for so long. And then you go, well, what have I been waiting on? You know, because it's fear. It's fear. It's fear. So you have to get that fear and put that fear behind you and trust and have faith.
Well, and even in that process, isn't the revelation of that pretty powerful? Like, wow.
Yes. It is. It's a wow. It's a big wow for me because I struggle with why I waited so long. I can say all day, oh, well, I was sick, or because, I didn't trust people. But the biggest thing is just to learn to trust yourself and build a good relationship with self. And I think sometimes even not in illness, just in regular life, we get away from taking care of self.
Yeah.
And I'm just now really starting to learn that. At 40, hey, it doesn't matter, right? Those things that we weren't taught or exposed to, those things really do matter. But you have to face those, and you have to be comfortable with it. And you have to say, well, hey, that's the hand I was dealt. And you deal with it. I'm not angry at anyone. My parents did the best they could. They loved me. My family was awesome, loved me. But it was just things that I didn't get along the way. And so that's part of my journey. Part of my journey.
For sure. So you mentioned briefly, for the audience out there, our listeners, so you've been living with Crohn's disease.
Yes, I was diagnosed. Well, actually, it's been a while, but my freshman year in college, that was, I want to say, fall of '99, I started having stomach cramps, and I felt like maybe I was constipated. So I've been living with symptoms since about fall of 1999, and then, thinking the stress of leaving home, I had thought I had a nervous stomach or something, but then the symptoms progressed. And when I went home for Christmas break, I said, Mom, I need to go to a doctor. And so we got into a doctor, and I'm thinking I'm getting answers, but I was pretty much told that I was imagining my stomach hurting, because they really couldn't find anything. And also, where I lived and where I was from, I was told that let's take a step back. So they told me that I was imagining things. So they sent me to a psychiatrist. So I go, and I said, well, okay, it's free, so I'll go. But I'm knowing I'm not imagining this. This is all day. It was so bad that, like, when I would take a bite of food, immediately my stomach would hurt. And I'm like, I couldn't eat anything. Got to the point where doubled over in pain. I can't get to class, and I'm not imagining this. But we're not knowing. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. And I did hide a lot from my family because I didn't want to leave school. Okay. I wanted to go to college. I was so excited about school. So I think finally I was diagnosed around, I want to say it was the spring of 2000. No, yeah, 2000. Yeah, spring of 2000, I think I was diagnosed. But before then, I had seen 3 doctors. One, like I told you, told me I needed to go see a psychiatrist. The other told me it was heartburn or something like that, gave me medicine. It didn't help. And then finally, I made it to a doctor that simply ran a blood test. He saw my symptoms, but the doctor before him mentioned IBS, but said in Crohn's, but told me that typically African Americans don't have that disease. So he didn't run the test. Finally made it.
Was this when you were 18? Was this when symptoms first started?
Symptoms first started at 18.
Okay. And then the blood test, where were you at this point, age-wise?
I was age-wise about 19.
Okay.
Coming back in. Yeah, it was February. I was 19 years old. So finally, I met a doctor. My mother had a friend at work, and she was just, confiding in a friend, coworker. And the lady said, "Hey, you may need to go see this doctor. He may be able to give you some answers." So we went to the doctor, and we went in, and he wanted me to do a colonoscopy, but he had already told me, he says, "I'm going to send your blood work off." He says, "I think you have Crohn's." He says, "I'm not 100%. He says, "I'm about 100% sure, but I got to do this blood test." And we hadn't had the colonoscopy yet, but he looked at all of my symptoms and everything I was telling him. And he sent my blood work off to a colleague of his in Florida. And when the blood work came back, he was like, "Yeah, this is what you have. And this is the next steps to what we need to do." So diagnosed, I want to say fall of 2000, 19 years old. And I'm sitting here. And when I got the diagnosis, I almost just stopped listening. I'll never forget the day. And my mother started talking. So she said, "Is this something that we can cure?" And he says, "No, it's autoimmune. So we can manage it, but she'll have it all of her life." So at this point, I'm not listening. This is when it just, everything, my life in that one conversation changed immediately. That's when the anger started. That's when depression started. And I just gave up. So at least he tried to treat me. He started me on prednisone. I'll never forget. I started at like 14 pills a day.
Oh my goodness.
And because I couldn't eat, and when backtrack to after the colonoscopy, when my blood test came back, he showed me my colon, and I had ulcers everywhere. And so I'm starting to feel like I progressed from IBS, and I progressed all the way through, because I even experienced the ulcers and the bleeding and the pain, right? Mm-hmm. And then I really felt like, because it was such a slow transition when I did go to a physician, that I progressed, because I couldn't get anyone to just stop, listen, and just take heed to what I'm telling them about my body. It is my body, right? So I think we would know a little bit more about what's going on in our body. Don't know. I was so angry about that. And so my mother, I still continued to try to go to school. And so my mother let me go, but I got there and I just couldn't function. So she came and picked me up. I had to withdraw. And so I withdrew and went home so my mother could try to help nurse me back to health. It got so bad where I was maybe in the bed 6 days out of a week. Wow. Because I was just doubled over in pain. Once the pain started, it would progress. So I could tell when the pain would start, because my stomach would cramp, and then I would start to vomit. And I would cry about that because it was hurting because I didn't have anything on my stomach in the first place. So I'm dry heaving, I'm doubled over, and I'm doing this for 3 to 5 days every week. And then I had maybe one good day, but even on the good day, I couldn't eat. And anything that I tried to eat upset my stomach. So, and not knowing that certain things you can't really eat, because even though I'd gone to the doctor, he still didn't really just give me any guidance on what I should eat, what I shouldn't eat, if I should go liquid diet. Those things I learned later from when I moved from Arkansas to Missouri. And I moved from Arkansas to Missouri in 2007. So from, I want to say 2000 to 2007, I wasn't getting any treatment because I stopped taking the steroids. And you're not supposed to stop steroids, just stop them. But they made me feel so bad. And I know that I went through whatever I went through with that. But I was at my wit's end. And I will admit that I came to the point where I felt like if this was what life was going to be, that I no longer wanted to be here.
So in that 7-year span,
mm-hmm.
How were you managing Crohn's?
It wasn't. It was one of those things where I just played it by ear. If I had a good day, I had a good day. And I also wasn't watching what I was eating.
Okay.
I wasn't doing anything. I didn't do any research. I didn't do any of that. I just kind of made it through. And if I had a good time, it was good. But when those symptoms started to settle a little bit, it wasn't that I was getting better. It was actually getting worse. But I just didn't pay attention. I just let the fact that, okay, Crohn's has me now. So whatever. I'm a young lady. I'm supposed to be having the best time of my life right now. And didn't happen for me. So it was a lot of resentment there. Completely shut down. So I went through having flares, and then I would bounce back from the flare. And then on top of being anemic, D deficient, all of those things, I was back between 2000 and 2007. I was back and forth from the hospital. They were treating me for I remember getting treatment for being anemic, but that's not really treating the underlying issue. If you don't try to treat anemia, but if you don't get Crohn's under control, you're probably not going to get anemia under control. So
wow.
I went through that. Lost lots of weight. It was heck trying to gain weight. So it was several years of just pain and anger and not really having any guidance. Not knowing to be an advocate for myself. Not knowing that the way I started to live was only damaging to me, because I didn't want to stop hanging out with the friends. I didn't want to stop my life. I had a plan. I was, when I first entered into college, I wanted to be a physical therapist. And that was my plan. And once the diagnosis came, my plan went out the window. I didn't have a plan B.
So let me backtrack just a little bit. So 98 symptoms start.
Mm-hmm.
You go for over a year of dealing with misdiagnosed, told that they think it's a psychological issue. There's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
And in that process, your symptoms continue to progress. Things get worse.
Mm-hmm.
There's blood work that could have been done prior, because the disease isn't associated with the African American race.
Right.
It's less likely that it's Crohn's disease. So it's prolonging the situation. Finally, 99, you get diagnosed, try to go back to college, doesn't work. where do you go mentally? Are you in denial from 2000 to 2007? Like, nope,
Yeah.
this is not going to master me? Or is it kind of like you succumb to it and just like, whatever, Crohn's has kind of just destroyed everything. I just got to try to figure out what to do.
To be honest, it was a mix between the two. I would go from, like I said, the anger and just give up, like whatever. I don't care at this point. And then I would go to and I think that being in denial was part of me not caring as well.
Okay.
I hadn't totally accepted the fact that, okay, I have an illness. I didn't. I was so angry and I was just so upset. But I wouldn't talk to anybody about it. If you would come in contact with me, you wouldn't know. Now, only a certain few people would know that I was really sick. And I have had friends now that came back into my life. They were like, you just kind of pushed us away. And I apologize because they didn't know. But when I first got sick, I was met with, I'm not getting help from the medical community. I don't have 100% support from all family. Now, my intermediate family was awesome.
Okay.
They took care of me. But it's just other close family members that had a lot to say about what it was and what it wasn't. Until it got so bad that I was in and out of the hospital, I think then they started to realize, oh, she wasn't faking. So to have the medical community tell me I was faking, and have my family tell me, and then my friends disappear. Oh yeah, I was angry. So I went into immediate shutdown.
Okay.
It wasn't anything. At this point, I was very lost because I just let it consume me. I just never moved forward or planned to do anything else. So at this point, total give up.
What were you telling yourself?
You know what it was? I don't even know what I was telling myself, to be honest. It was more of a feeling. I'm an introvert, so to speak. But for the most part, I go in with my feelings.
Okay.
So I held everything in, even with my immediate family. I didn't talk about it because I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know that this wasn't end all be all, but that's how it felt. That's how it felt. It felt like I hit a brick wall and I was like, how do I get over or through this wall? And the one thing that's different about me now is the fact that I don't let it define me.
Yeah.
I totally let it consume me. But that's also to stem back to the healthcare, the mental health. And I checked out completely. So was I not only physically sick, I was mentally there too. I don't think like anyone really thought to check in on that. And I didn't have anyone to ever say it to me. But I just mentally checked out. And I was like, well, whatever this disease is going to do, it's going to do. And I also self-sabotage, where I got to the point where, drinking is not great for any kind of, IBS, colitis, Crohn's. It's not your best friend at all. Now, that's the one thing my doctor told me.
Yeah.
So, but me being angry, I heard don't drink. And I said, well, I will drink. So what? And I made things worse. And then until I had my one big flare, I want to say August of 2008. I've had flares before then, but my body had started, before the major flare, my body had started to do weird things. Like I was having trouble with my kidneys. I was having trouble with being anemic. I couldn't get out of bed because I wasn't taking care of myself. And the thing I've learned about Crohn's is, no, it's not end all be all. But if you don't get it under control, everything else just kind of falls out of place with your body.
So let me ask you real quick. So can you share how Crohn's affected you or affects you physically? Like, what are your symptoms? What were your symptoms?
My symptoms were primarily stomach cramps, and I would always vomit. Those were my two major. If I tried to eat anything, immediately would come up. I could not eat, drink anything I had to let whatever was going on pass. So those were my major. How I knew I was getting sick, my stomach would start to hurt. And it was like really bad, just really stomach cramps. And I'm doubled over, fetal position in bed or on the floor, because it felt better sometimes being on the floor.
Okay.
Those were definitely my symptoms. Extremely fatigued. And then on top of the fact that I couldn't eat. So I was tired. I slept most of it because I felt like, okay, if I can go to sleep, if I can just go to sleep, I won't feel it. So I slept a lot. So that was one of the things that I did learn. It was a bad behavior that I learned, but it was also to protect me in many different ways. It was to protect me from the pain, but also just protect me from what I was currently going through at that moment.
Were you able to work?
For a little, at first, no. And then I would try, and then I would have flares. And so then I wouldn't work. It got to the point where I thought I was going to have to go on disability for a while there. But then always, it just seems like it would I would fight to get back, because at this time my son was born in 2005. Okay. So that's when I started to look at life different. And that's when I started to see that, okay, I have a purpose and I have to live for this kid. But even though I had him, I still had the voice on this side of my head. Like, I just couldn't get past it. Held on to a lot. But I was able to work, but I did miss a lot of work.
Okay.
And then I got afraid because I thought I was going to lose my job at some point. Started in education when I moved to Kansas City, Missouri. So I started in education as the library media assistant. And I wasn't well when I got the job. So sometimes I would miss. And then that's when I had, the year after I got hired, I had my major flare. So I did miss a lot of work because I was in the hospital, and then I couldn't go back to work for a while. And then that's when I thought, okay, I may have to file for disability. I can't.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, with your major flare, what was so different about this compared to your other flares?
So this one, I felt it was the symptoms. So I remember telling my sister I felt thirsty and I thought I was dehydrated. And she was like, well, if you're dehydrated, you need to hydrate. And I said, okay. And this is before I met my doctor. And because at this point, I'm not getting no one's helping. I don't have a healthcare provider or anything. I'm just now moving to Missouri. And then I started to get sick, and I'm at work, and I remember telling my sister, I feel dehydrated. Well, come to find out, and then the other symptom, it felt like major constipation again. Okay. But I didn't have to use the bathroom, and it was just the weirdest thing. And so, but that pain started to progress. It got worse. And I was like, I told my sister, I said, hey, I need to go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital, and we got there, and I'm doubled over by this time in pain. And so they take me back to the ER, and they do an x-ray, and they can see that I am inflamed. So they admit me to the hospital. But by this time, I don't have a doctor. So I met my first doctor in Kansas City, specialist there, the GI. And so they scheduled me for a colonoscopy. But well, before that, let me take a step back. So I went in because I wasn't feeling well, doubled over, and that was on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
They were getting ready to let me go home on Wednesday. And I told the nurse, I said, I don't feel good. I said, something's not right. And so that's when I started to have the pain again. And then my doctor, when they talked to the doctor, they kept me in the hospital. And yeah, they went in for the colonoscopy, and that's when they could see the disease portion of my colon. And it was partially in my small and large intestines. Okay. And they had to go in and remove about 13 inches, I believe.
Wow.
But it was so weird because I felt like I could not drink enough water. I was drinking great Gatorade, anything I could drink. And I was wondering, like, why is this? This is the weirdest thing. So we finally had the first surgery, and I was off of work for about, it was laparoscopic, and I was off for about 2 weeks, 4 weeks total, but I did it over the Christmas break. So I thought that, okay, this is over. And that's when I was introduced to Remicade. And so in 2008, I did that. And I felt like I was getting better, but the symptoms I would have still with the cramping, still had that feeling like I was constipated. And I was like, well, they had the surgery, so what's going on? Right. So working with my doctor in around 2000, I want to say 12, same symptoms came back. I'm at work and I can't even sit because the pain is so bad. And I told my sister again, I got to go to the hospital. Well, before then, kind of taking a step back, my skin had started getting really bad, and I started like getting boils on my back, my face. My lips had started to turn really dark and crack. I didn't know what was going on. And at one point, my hair started coming out. So I'm like, what the heck is going on with me? So we get to the hospital, and I had been with the doctor, but because I guess I didn't have any healthcare providers before, or I wasn't taking any medication, the Crohn's had gotten really bad. So at this point, I want to get the story right. Oh yeah, I went in. They rushed me in the hospital. Same deal, same symptoms. But this time, when they went in to do the colonoscopy, they had to wake me up because I had to go into emergency surgery because I had an opening in my intestines. I had also fused to my abdominal wall, parts of my intestine has. And the reason for the boils and everything is because my intestines is open. I'm at this point toxic. So like, I'm wondering, so emergency surgery, they had to do another 13. And at this point, the doctor told me, he said, listen, we can't do anything else laparoscopic. If you have another surgery, we're going to have to open you up completely. So I was off work that time for 6 weeks. And that's when I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to stop working, but how am I going to take care of my kid? How am I going to do this? So depression set in again, which never went away because I never dealt with it. Okay. So that sets in again. I left home from Arkansas where everybody I love, I know, I'm comfortable. And I moved to Missouri because I knew the one thing that I knew is I had to make sure that my son had exposure to different things from where and what I did. And so I couldn't find a job, and I'm a believer in signs. And so every job that I would apply for, I get the interview. No, we're going to go with another candidate. Get the interview, maybe even a second interview. No, I'm going to go with another candidate. But moving to Missouri saved my life. Okay. Because if I never moved to Missouri, I don't think I would have found the doctor to take care of me, nor would I have found the reason to keep pushing to live to make sure my baby had mommy around.
And how old are you at this point?
27. 27
Okay,
at this point.
so you're about 10 years in of dealing with Crohn's.
Yes.
From the beginning up until this point, transition to Missouri. What was it about Missouri that saved your life?
That second time in ICU, 2012. I felt like I was at a crossroads where I had a decision to make. Kind of jumping back to, remember when I told you that I had pretty much given up and I said I didn't want to live anymore. If I have to feel this, I had no desire to go on. I was pretty much at a crossroads where I had a choice. And when you're confronted with that choice, when you have to really sit there and say, okay, and people, I'd be afraid. I used to be afraid of what people would think of me when I said this, but I was at a crossroads and I had to choose to live or die.
Okay.
So it was my choice. And because I couldn't keep continuing to go through this, the up and down, because with Crohn's, yes, it's a physical thing, but Crohn's is also very spiritual, but it's also it takes a toll on your mental capacity. It just takes over.
Yeah, it
every aspect of your life, right?
Yes.
So it's easy to succumb to it. It's easy to say, you know what, I'm done. But I'm here to say that I'm so happy now that I was at that crossroads in my life. Now, was it just easy coming from the crossroads? No, because I had so many bad habits I picked up. I had to think about the diet changes. I had to think about being physically active. I had to just try to put life into perspective. But that's hard when you really just don't know. You've lived in this sunken place, so to speak, for so long.
Yeah.
You don't know. You have no idea. And then I believe in God with all my heart, grew up, faith, and I had to deal with that. I started really challenging me on my faith because Crohn's affected my love life. Crohn's affected me being the mother that I wanted to be. Crohn's affected me in every aspect of my life. But I could only see the bad in it. I couldn't see the good. But now I can. It's taken this long, and that's when the light came on when I'm sitting in ICU and we can't get my blood pressure to go back up. And so they put me in ICU. I was there for 4 days, and finally my blood pressure starts to rise, and I'm starting to, I was awake and could hear things, but for the most part I was asleep. Okay. And the biggest thing that came out of this for me was that I'm still living. So I'm a fighter. But I also have a purpose. Because if at that crossroads, yeah, he gave me a choice, but I feel like, hey, listen, it wasn't time. It's not your time. But it's still it's really scary to have to be there when you feel like you have to be careful what you think, say, put, those things, you carry weight over your life and you're responsible for that. And I had to go through that in order to get to where I am now, to know that life is so much more than just Crohn's.
Absolutely. So even in that, let's go back. I want to take a few steps back when you said you realize you have purpose, you have more to do here. So science tells us that over 66,000 thoughts pass through our mind in a day. Okay, so when you look at a whole lot. So when you sit and think about the time frame from the beginning up until now, from 98 to 2012, we're at about 13, 14 years in of battling chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lack of support from the medical world, disappointments from close friends, family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just so many parts, and how you said it affected your love life, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
all of the parts that are so vital in order to truly learn how to thrive in a world of chronic illness. Yes. What was it, do you think, for you that helped you to catch that thought that you have purpose and hold on to it? Why 2012? What was it about 2012 where this thought, it got planted and it wasn't uprooted by all the trauma that you had been through?
Well, 2012 was when I decided that I'm not going to be in this position again. And I think it was 2012 when that doctor said to me, we can't do laparoscopic again.
Okay.
And we can't do this again.
Okay.
It was the look on his face, but it was also the fact that I was in ICU, and this is not my first time. And I just didn't, I said to myself, you know what, I want to live. Because this thing was going to take me out one way or the other. I was headed down that road with, and I can list the things that started happening. Ovaries issues. I had cysts on my ovaries, and I had kidney problems. It was just a long list of things that started to happen. That's because I had given up. And 2012, from the doctor telling me, look, we can't do this again. And to me, to say to myself, okay, I really and truly want to live. And then, like I also said, my son, I never wanted to leave him without me.
Yeah.
I was his only consistent parent, but then I also had trouble with that, because how good of a mother can I be? And I'm sick 80% of the time, 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So I had to get it together, one way or the other. I had to get it together. So when I first had that first thought, was not necessarily for me to live.
Okay.
It was for others. It was for my son. It was for my family, not so to speak me. Mm-hmm. I didn't make that transition until later. Okay. And I want to say the choice to live for me didn't come until about, I want to say 2017, 18.
Now, when you started the Remicade,
mm-hmm.
Did the Remicade immediately take you into remission, or was it you were still, it just was, well, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. You started with prednisone.
Yes.
And then after a while, that had to table that because the side effects were too intense.
Yes.
Shifted over into Remicade. And were you ever in remission with Remicade, or was it still a roller coaster?
With Remicade, no. That's when I started Remicade in 2008. 2008. That's when I had my first visit to the hospital. But he also put me on a medication called Lialda, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm saying the name right. But that he put me on that, and so it was Remicade and that. So primarily just the Remicade.
Okay.
And then if I would have a flare here and there, they would, steroids and all that to try to get me back stable. But it's just because I had let it go for so long. Remicade by itself was not going to help me.
Okay.
And it saved my life, but at the same time, it wasn't doing enough. So that's why I was back in the hospital 2012 with the symptoms. And plus, I had missed doctor's appointments, not taking my medicine like I should, just playing around.
Okay.
Because it just all went back to, like I said, I just shut down. And so after 2012, that's when I got it together. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to miss an appointment. I'm making sure I get my medicine. But then when I moved to St. Louis in 2013, I met my doctor that I have now. and she did a colonoscopy, and she could see that where I had my resection, I was starting to develop like little small ulcers. So she was like, "Yeah, you're active." She says, you will be back in surgery before you know it. So she started me on I was still on Remicade, and I'm trying to think of the name of Mecaptoprine. She started me on that, but then I had a bad reaction to it. My liver wouldn't metabolize it or something, so that made me very sick. So then that was a 50 milligram pill. So then she says, "Okay, I'm gonna cut it in half. Let's do 25." And then she also put me on allopurinol to kind of help my liver with the to metabolize the Mecaptoprine.
Okay.
So once I started that along with the Remicade, then that's when I started to go into remission around 2015.
Okay. So wow. So that was even that a 2-year journey of just medications, trying to figure out. And I think that is what a lot of people really need to understand, that if you're listening today, you're newly diagnosed, or you're 5 years in, 2 years in, whatever your process is, you're not alone. And you're hearing Nedra's process of multiple medications, and then the time frame of adjusting the dosage to identify what does her body need. And then understanding that I think sometimes that people oversimplify chronic illnesses. Well, why don't you just take this? Or why don't you just take that? Or why don't you just stop eating this or stop doing that? And understanding, you may know 50 people with Crohn's disease. Every person is affected differently. There's not a one-size-fits-all treatment plan for this disease, as well as colitis, the cousin of Crohn's. And so just sitting there, just thank you. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and transparency with your journey. What are you doing today to manage the disease?
Right now, I'm still on the Remicade. My doctor is thinking about trying to pull away the Mecaptoprine. She's thinking that my levels are good enough, because she runs tests on me every 8 weeks. I have a Remicade, actually an infusion coming up this Friday.
Can you explain to our listeners what Remicade is and what that process looks like for you?
So Remicade is a drug that I take, and they come to my house, and it's intravenously. I can never say that. Sorry. And it's a slow process. It's about 2.5 hours where you sit, and they just kind of let it, you drip. It goes in, and it kind of helps with the inflammation, the enzymes that our body produces anyway. But with Crohn's, we just kind of overproduce, and so we have to get those enzymes under control for inflammation and things of that nature. So Remicade kind of helps with that. It doesn't stop it, but it just kind of manages the inflammation, along with the Mecaptoprine, and also allopurinol is what I'm taking. So my cycle, I go in, my nurse comes to my house every 8 weeks, and we sit here for about 2.5 hours, and she does my infusion. And then we do a blood draw, and that also sees like the level of my liver count. She takes something else to make sure. She just checks she always says to me, the concentration of the medicine in my body alongside something to make sure that the inflammation is in check. So she's checking my blood every 8 weeks. And so that's a good sign, because I know that being on this medicine for so long is gonna, I don't want to do it for a lifetime, but I had to do something in order to get this under control.
Yeah. I mean, 2 resectionings, talking about 26 inches altogether removed. Your colon, trying to be a mother through all of this, in and out of work, the financial impact. I mean, we haven't even got to the financial impact of dealing. That's a whole other episode. It's like
whole nother spectrum.
you know, How was the social talk to me, talk to the audience about social life? Did you have one?
No, not socially. I had at some point, well, social life was hard because half the time you're sick. Yeah. So you're in bed. So you don't have a social life. And then when you are dealing with an autoimmune, you can make plans, but right before it, you feel like something just hit you like a ton of bricks and you can't go. And people get upset. It's not that, now some of it I didn't want to be around people, but at the same time, I was honestly tired. So like if I work all day, I got to get home to get back to where I can reset.
Yeah.
Because even out in the world, even though I'm dealing with the fatigue, I still gotta show up. Right. I still gotta work. And you still have people that need you. Have family members that need me. Have coworkers that need me. Have friends that need me. So in that too is hard because you still gotta show up and give 100% that you don't have.
Right. So, you're no longer functioning.
Nope.
At 100%. I mean, you are literally having to manage life.
Yes.
Whatever responsibilities that you do have, but you're doing it at 50, 30, 60, 70, 80% energy, or you may wake up with 80 and in 2 hours you're at a 40.
Oh, you done. Yeah. Done. So yeah, that's the constant battle. So alongside Remicade, you asked me, what am I doing to manage? I'm also going to therapy twice a month. I'm trying to get back into working out. That was totally helpful for me. It kind of helped with the stress, but you can release. Because with Crohn's, we know that stress is one of the, things that we have to keep under control. But for the most part, a lot of people don't even know when they're stressed.
Come on,
I didn't know. And so you don't know. But Crohn's is a stress itself. I mean, because the simple fact that you and I both know that even though we can manage it and we get to this point and I'm in remission, it's still that little voice in the back of my head, like, well, Crohn's can show its ugly head at any moment, right? So those are the things, that little voice keeps me going. That's what keeps me in therapy. That's what keeps me, I'm, making sure my diet, I'm not eating, greasy foods. I don't fried foods. And that's one thing I miss is my fried chicken and my fried pork chops. So those are the things I had to give up. Spicy food. And the one thing, now I can eat it just a little bit, is spaghetti. The spaghetti sauce, I had to give up.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Right there with you. It's like,
oh my gosh. So it's, people look and they may say, oh, well, you can plan, but it's the little things that you have to give up. It's the small things, which can in turn turn into big things. So I guess my message is that it's not a death sentence. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But you got to get up every single day and put one foot forward, because Crohn's doesn't define you. You are in control of it. And once my message, I want people to know that through my journey, when you give up, when you feel like there's no hope, that's when you let the disease win. Can't let it win. Now, it can knock you down, but the challenge is to get back up. You got to keep moving at all costs, because it's so much to live for. I mean, look at me. I'm 40 years old. I'm finding myself. I don't think we ever fully know who we truly are, but I just feel good. And even if what we say tomorrow, if I have a flare, you know what? So be it. I'm going to get back up. I'm going to start over, and I'm going to put Crohn's in check. So just try to keep it in check as much as possible. My advice is to not carry it alone. Get in, find a support group.
Yeah.
Find somebody people you can talk to. Research, read, That's the biggest. You are your biggest advocate. And don't be embarrassed by it. Don't.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's my whole thing, because in all of that, I lost a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I gave up a lot, but I still have a reason to be here. And if I help one person, if I just, that's my biggest thing. And I was so afraid, afraid of telling my story, because I was afraid of the judgment, and I was afraid that people would judge it. But it's my journey.
Yes.
And so it's worth sharing. And so for people that's out there suffering, you're in pain, or you're just trying to figure it out, you start your journey, you're not alone. Find your close knit people that you have to have your back. And hold on to that. I'm gonna also say pray. I'm also gonna say find something that you, and even that you can believe in, that you have hope that, and if it's God or whatever religion that you practice, whatever it is, you got to find something that's gonna anchor you, because at any moment, it can be, life is so short, and life can be taken away, and we take it for granted. But we can't let Crohn stop us.
Right.
We can't let it defeat us. We just gotta be advocates, and we gotta just keep pushing. It's not easy. No, and even if me being in remission, I still am not at 100%.
Right.
The other Saturday, I slept until noon, because I'm pushing so hard. During the week, it's like, and I had a hair appointment and missed the hair appointment.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, again, and I know I mentioned it a little bit ago. Yeah. Once you've been diagnosed, and Crohn's, it's full body inflammation. It's not just localized in one area. And that's why over time, other organs began to be affected, as you mentioned, your kidneys, the lining of your stomach, and the perforation of the colon, and then the spreading and the boils. And, it's a domino effect. And so you're never functioning at 100%. Anybody with a chronic illness is working 10 times harder than the able-bodied individual. And so for what would you want the younger, freshly diagnosed Nedra to know then that you know now? What did you need then that you didn't realize, or you were trying to figure out, that may have helped you to thrive in the first 10 years versus having to navigate this for 15 to 20 years to get where you're at? What didn't you get that you needed? For those that are in it, those that are caregivers, they may be frustrated with the person that they're caring for, not knowing how to support them, because that person that's fighting the affliction is in pain, they're frustrated. You're not happy when you're always sick.
No.
And so what would you say to the younger Nedra, or to caregivers or people that are newly diagnosed and trying to figure out how in the world they're going to make it through this?
I would have to say that if the younger Nedra, just to simply say you are enough, to know that your life matters. And that's what I would have said to myself. And I wish I just had someone to just take me to the side to just really talk about my feelings. Yeah. To kind of help me process. I didn't. I became angry, and I stayed angry for years. And my anger and mental health affected relationships as well. It wasn't just Crohn's. So my younger self, and for people that are younger people or older people, whoever are just starting their journey, don't give up on you. I strongly suggest when you have this disease, therapy is awesome. Therapy is awesome in every aspect of life, not just because of Crohn's, but it just, it has helped me. And for caregivers, you need therapy as well. Give yourself grace,
Yeah.
each of you. But you need a support group as well.
Yeah.
I do know if it wasn't for my mother in the beginning, my caregiver, I probably, well, it was just difficult. My mother is a believer. She's a praying woman. And it was funny when we finally had the discussion about me being sick. And when I finally admitted to my family that I didn't want to live, my mother said to me, I already knew. She says, so I was praying the opposite prayer. While you're praying to go, I'm praying for you to stay. Yeah. And I said, well, how did you know? And she says, Nedra, I know my babies. She said, but I also know God. And my mother taught me to pray. But I'm also excited about me finding this new journey, because in that I found that I'm actually an empath. And kind of working through that and learning and trying to, I really want to find a spiritual guide to help me. Like, therapy's helping, but I need a spiritual guide to kind of help me with my spiritual side of it, my spiritual journey as to getting fully into that. And another thing you mentioned about helping others heal while we heal, man, that's a beautiful thing, because you do find a different, it's just, I'm coming back to my faith. I'm not going to say I never believed, but it tested my faith. Being sick, the pain tested my faith in ways you can never imagine. People would talk to me about, well, you need to get back in church and you need to do this. And I was very silent. I wasn't disrespectful, but was just done. Because I'm like, how do you let somebody hurt so much, But don't give up. Don't give up faith. Keep faith. Keep pushing. Keep believing. It's really a light on the other side. I know when you're going through it, you feel like, oh my God, I'm in it alone. You're not. Because even though I'm not in flare or going through and being sick, I'm in it with you, because I've walked that walk. That's my journey. And
one of the stories I love to share is when you're dealing with something chronic and hard, and you don't know how you're going to get through it, and you're learning how to trust God in the midst of all this. Mm-hmm. One of the stories that has helped me on my journey is really looking at Jesus when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and mm-hmm. he was asking God to take this. Can you take this cup from me? He didn't want to go to the cross. We don't want to suffer, and he's crying out to God to the point where he's sweating blood. Mm-hmm. And thinking about that, when you are at that breaking point and you're asking God, can you take this? And then Jesus says, not my will, but your will be done. Mm-hmm. And so it is the most beautiful experience to me that even Jesus was asking God, can you take this? Can like something else? Can like my big toe hurt? It's like, do I have to finish this out? And so did Jesus lack faith? No.
He didn't lack the faith.
He didn't lack it. But it's one of those things where, I don't know about you on your journey. I know that has been a frequent question. Do you have a faith for God to heal? This is not a faith issue. This is God, give me the strength to endure. This is the building of resilience, and so on and so forth. And so just as you were saying, when people asking you or telling you, you just need to get back in church, you just need to oversimplifying mm-hmm. a complex situation. And so for friends and family members, caregivers, even physicians, nurses, for those of you that are watching, understanding that to be cognizant not to oversimplify complex situations.
Correct.
And a lot of times somebody dealing with chronic illness, their withdrawal isn't that they just can't stand you, not want to be around you. It truly has to do with you don't speak my language.
Nope.
I just,
Because
and you have to, raise the question, do you subject yourself to questions that are going to further incite anxiety and frustration about a situation that they just can't relate to? It doesn't make their questions bad.
No.
It's just they don't know. And so this is a platform that we've created to help people on their journey to be able to know the pros and cons of chronic illness and how to and learning from one another.
Yeah. And that's beautiful the way you, exactly how you said it, because with caregivers and family, friends, they'll say things like, you just need to get up and go try.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I will take that advice. And then you're thinking to yourself, you know what? And then you would, and that's another thing you have to be careful with, because they really don't understand it. And so they're really trying to help.
Yes.
And so you that's why you have to kind of get yourself in check, because it's not that they mean it, but it doesn't feel good when you are sick and you have someone tell you that, and you're like, okay, am I not trying? Because for me, I'm trying, but my body won't allow for me to do XYZ. So that's the thing. It still has its moments where my resentment does flare a little bit, because you look back and you go, wow, I could have done this, and this, but I may be crazy. I don't know. I could do without the pain, but I don't know if I would have ever gotten where I am now.
Okay.
And if I didn't, and I mean that in physical way, I mean that spiritually, I mean that in every way. I wasn't obedient in a lot of ways while going through this. I still heard God's voice. But right before I got sick, I remembered praying and I couldn't hear his voice. And I was like, well, what is going on with this? Strangest feeling ever. I'm like, I've never not heard him. And so that was because he was there, but he had gotten tired of asking. Like, I need you to do XYZ for me. So I don't take it necessarily as punishment. I just take it as a lesson learned.
Yeah.
But going through it, I take it as punishment, because I was like, well, Lord, this is hurting. And I don't know what I did to deserve this. Like, what did I do to deserve this of all things? And so now that I've come to this end of it, I have so much love to give. I have so much in me that I have to give. So me going through the therapy, me working in these steps are just getting me ready for what I am supposed to be doing in life. And I'm a helper. I'm supposed to be there with people, for people. And I know that. And so I fought it for years. Yeah. But that goes back to me saying I'm learning me. And it's a really cool thing. And then you have the triggers and you have the naysayers, but now I don't listen. I'm here. If I can make it through,
come on now.
What I made it through with Crohn's, I'm not gonna let you keep me from it. Like, I'm just not. I'm no longer gonna do it. I was in my way for too long.
Yes,
I was in my way for too long, and it's for me to even. It's emotional, because for me to even talk about it, for someone to hear my story, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm open. I'm here for others. If you ever have questions, and like Crystal said, no, we aren't physicians, but we just wanted to share our story so that people know that they're not by themselves. Because you go through this and you really do feel alone. But
yeah, for sure. Before we wrap things up, is there anything that the 40-year-old Nedra would change about your journey? Because you are who you are because of what you've navigated through. So obviously pain is horrible. It sucks. It's like, oh, there's parts that, man, yeah, I would have done this part different. But would you be who you are today had you not navigated through your story?
No. And it's I don't know if I would change it. It's hard, painful, lonely, but at the same time, like I said, I would not be who I am and who I'm coming into. Like I don't know if I don't know. The cost is too high, I think, if I wanted to go and change it. The cost is too high. And that's crazy to say, right? Because I paid a pretty penny, but nah. I'm a better me for myself. Mm-hmm. First and foremost. We forget about us because we are mothers, we are sisters, we are aunts, we are friends. But we gotta women, period. Yes. So we forget about loving us. We forget about self-care, and we gotta do it. And so I wouldn't, for me, first and foremost. And I thank him because I'm still here and I'm able to tell my story. I'm able to be a better mother to my moody teenager. Love him to death, but woo, I said to myself, like, I have a son, so I was like, woo, I don't have to go through all the mood swings. Yeah, I was wrong. Boys are moody too. They are. Yeah. They are moody too. And so that was scary too. Been on this journey with him. It also going into that without just going into too much, but he had to mature and grow up faster than what I would have liked. Yeah. But because I was a single mom, I had to teach him things. Because if I'm sick, he has to keep going. He has to keep pushing. So it was things that I had to teach him, but because of it, we have like a really cool relationship. Can't wait till he's grown because now I'm still mom. We can't be friends yet. So no, he's a good kid, and he's my world. He's my world. So yeah, just to be a better mom, and I don't think I would change it. The only thing I would say that I would change would just to advocate better for myself. Okay. But other than that, because then I wouldn't have this smile, it's the joy that I have on the inside. It's because I felt just dead for so long. Like I was just existing. So I'm just starting to live a little bit.
And I think a big part is two things. Your story is sacred. Mm-hmm. It's your love story between you and God. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very, very sacred.
It is.
And you overcame and defeated every lie. Mm-hmm. Every lie that you couldn't make it, you weren't strong enough, you weren't built for this.
Yes.
Honey, you are mastering this. And even though the affliction is still there, mm-hmm. you defeated every lie, whether it was external or internal.
Yep.
And I just want to celebrate you today and celebrate God's faithfulness and really hearing your cry and you learning and taking the time to learn to love you, to have self-compassion, mm-hmm. while raising a dope son.
He is pretty dope. He is pretty dope. Yeah. But thank you though. Like I have to say that because when I found this platform, I've been so excited about it. I've shared, and this is something that I've always kind of looked for and hoped for. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was just like, you know what, God, you're speaking. Yes. I get you. I hear you. And I'm not going to back down. So that's why when you asked, I was like, okay, I can't say no. It was a test, but I also was happy to be a part of it. I'm not going to ignore him anymore. Just put it that way.
Good.
Put it that way.
Good
So,
deal.
yeah.
Is there anything else you want the audience to know?
I think I've pretty much put it all out there.
Okay.
Just kind of a repeat. Just love yourself. Give yourself grace. Um, but most importantly, don't walk this journey by yourself.
Yeah.
Find a support group. That is so important. That is the number one. And if you don't feel like your doctor is helping, then you move around. You shop around for your doctor. You find that person. God, he has healing hands, and the healing hands are through the people that are doctors, and he gives people powers and to help you to heal, to get back to somewhat normal, right? So
Right.
don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. If you don't like something, if the medicine's not feeling right, if it's not, this is something that you don't want to do, fight for it
That's it.
because you are worth it. Um, don't trade it for, don't do it for 10, 12, 15 years. Just my journey. Just saying you don't have to take it, that long, but just love yourself and give yourself time. Time is so precious. Just slow down, heal, and don't be in such a rush to try to get back to normal, because then if from my experience, you just push yourself back 2 or 3 more steps. So let your body go through whatever it's going to go through. But just don't give up. But just give yourself time to heal. Then when it's time to go, you get back up and go. But the thing is to keep moving. You got to. You have no choice.
I love that. Now, as we prepare to really wrap things up, there's some really key parts that Nedra mentioned, which has been my motto, y'all know, with Love Your Life, that we talk about holistic health. Mm-hmm. So, Nedra, you talked about the physical part, which is go to your doctors, get your appointments, get your necessary scans, blood work. It's needed. Get the information so you know where to target the health needs that your body is saying that it needs. And then there's the mental health piece.
Yes.
Get into counseling, see a licensed counselor, a therapist, mentor, a balanced spiritual leader, pastor, whatever that looks like for you, because that looks different for everybody financially, what you have access to. But so the physical, the mental, and then the spiritual approach, drawing near to God, identifying, okay, what is this walk going to look like, God? What are you trying to teach me? Show me about myself. And then embracing the sacredness of your story with God on this journey, because your story is not supposed to look or sound like anybody else's. And we live in a world that is so toxic about comparison and comparing our process and our journeys. And that was never God's intention for us. We have our own individual process, the sacredness of our stories and our journey with God. And Nedra, you really unpacked yours today, and really just love the transparency that you gave on just the physical suffering, finding a doctor that actually saw you, heard you, and began to take the necessary approaches for your body and your particular condition and how Crohn's is affecting you. Yes. And then incorporating the mental health piece. Bringing better balance to yourself and identifying who you are and continuing to thrive and to grow in that area and getting grounded spiritually. And these are journeys that are ongoing. It's not a one and done. This is ongoing until we meet our maker. Yes. And so I just appreciate you being here. She will be back because we're going to continue to unpack a lot. Crohn's and colitis, dealing with IBD, which is the acronym for inflammatory bowel disease. It is a complex disease. There's a lot of parts, and you all literally got a snapshot of Nedra's story. And so there are other parts that we're going to continue to unpack as we continue on this journey. So I just want to thank you so, so much for choosing to listen to Inhabit My Eyes. Let's acknowledge. Let's learn. Let's grieve. We have to go through the grieving process. We got to heal. We have to grow, build, and serve each other one day at a time. Thank you all again so much for tuning in to Inhabit My Eyes. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.